Hello there, lovely people of the YouTube. Cyclops here, back with another video for you. I know I haven't done one of these computer videos in a while, but I guess better late than never, right? Anyways, a client of mine dropped this off at my place and wanted me to upgrade it for him. So, guess what kind of upgrades we have in mind? Dun 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 dun! Zotac! Dun 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 dun! Amp Edition! Dun 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 dun! GTX 980! Well, you're not impressed? Okay. How about this? Dun 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 dun! Dual GTX 980s. Now that's what I'm talking about. They're not going to be water cooled because he didn't want me to water cool them, and I don't blame him really. They run really cool and really quiet. These 980s hardly kick out any heat. But yeah, we're going to actually water cool the processor for him. I'm going to do a custom loop. Add some red LEDs, tongue twister. Make it look really nice and clean. Right now the components, I don't know the processor, I think it's a 4770K. We have an Asus Z87 Pro and EVGA GTX 780, I think 16 gigs of RAM, RM850 80 plus gold power supply from Corsair, and a Cooler Master CM, that's the same thing really, Cooler Master Stormtrooper. So, oh, I forgot. We're also gonna add a 512 gigabyte Samsung 850 Pro, which is the cutting edge of the SSDs that are out on the market right now. So, without further ado, I'm gonna cut and show you the rig after I'm finished, because really working on it is quite boring to put on camera, and I'm not gonna bore you guys to death. So, be back in a second. And we're back. As you can see, the rig is now finished. I've installed pretty much everything. It's ready to go. All I've got to do is overclock it and send it on its way. Now, yeah, the system is turned off right now, and it is the middle of the night. So, what do you think's gonna happen next? What's that? A ferret? Dun-na-na-na, 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 dun-na-na-na. That's much more like it, isn't it? Let's get you in for a closer look. Looks quite nice without the side panel, doesn't it? The first thing you'll notice is the the red bleach, basically. It's everywhere. I didn't expect those dark side LEDs to be so bright, but they are. Testament to their quality. Now, let's get you in for a closer look. I better not make this camera shake too much. So I hope you're not seeing orange, you're actually seeing red, because it's quite a bright red, very authoritative, and it's everywhere basically. 5 of the fans are red LEDs plus LED strips. The motherboard readouts are obviously in red as well. So the customer wanted red. This is how I do red. It's everywhere basically. You can see it from the top, even through the front reservoir. That's a reservoir pump combo. Pretty much everything that's related to the water cooling, alongside the LED single strip that I put up here, are from Dasmode. If you don't know him, Dasmode.com. He's a pretty cool guy. The main supplier for Canadian water cooling components in Canada, obviously. He does ship to States. He has a pretty good informative YouTube channel. Definitely check him out. He's a nice guy. And yeah, that's the plug over. Let's get to the components. So, the CPU block. It's a Dasmode Special EK Canadian Maple Leaf. I hope you can see the pattern that's etched on the acrylic. Yeah, it's reasonably priced. It doesn't have a jet plate, but it doesn't really need it, as you'll see from the temperature results later. That means the inlet and the inlet and outlet, it doesn't matter which port you choose. You can just choose either one, since there's no jet plate. Jet plate, for those of you who don't know, is basically a plate that usually put in the middle of the CPU water block. Water is forced through it, so basically accelerates the water through the micro channels in the middle of the CPU cooler to basically grab the heat from those fans faster. In theory it works, but unless we're pushing really huge overclock, you're not going to see any benefit from it. That is a bay reservoir and DDC pump combo. You can buy it from Dasmode.com, as I mentioned. You can buy it separately or as a combo. I think with the combo you save a couple of bucks, so it's also pre-assembled. So So it's pretty good deal. The radiator is a 240mm, 60mm thick Alpha Cool Nexus full copper radiator. That's quite a mouthful. And it's on push-pull, as you can see, with Cooler Master fans. These are the same Cooler Master fans up on the top. They're just one of them was transparent skew, which was different from the top, so that's all I had to use. And the airflow, the performance is the same, so it doesn't make a difference. I put the transparent one on the bottom because, you know, wanted to give it a, like, underneath the car neon sort of light, like from what was that movie, Fast and Furious. Turns out I didn't really need to because it doesn't show as much, and the main LED that illuminates everything. It's too strong. The LED is also from Dasmo.com. It is a dark side LED, which is red. It connects basically directly to the motherboard through a fan header. Just make sure if you do that, set it to 100%, else it won't glow as brightly as it would normally. Other than that, that's another Cooler Master fan, identical to those four. This one is not a Cooler Master fan. It is, in fact, the Silverstone Air Penetrator 120mm fan. The reason I put it there, the cars being so close together, I needed it to give fresh air to this top card through the single slot that's left for airflow. And yeah, the hugely directional airflow that the air penetrators offer really did the trick here to shave the temperatures by a couple degrees from the top card. They still run hot because I have a massive overclock on them, but it's quite manageable. The tubing, they're also from EK. They're matte black tubing. They look quite nice. They don't absorb light as much as you'd expect because they're matte black. The fittings, I forgot exactly what they are. They're barb fittings. The clamps are silver clamps. I've forgotten what exactly they are, but they provide a pretty good seal, which is what I needed for a loop like this, or any loop. In fact, you need good seal. That's pretty much it, really. The components, I think we've gone over them. Z87 Pro, 4770K. I'm in the middle of overclocking it, so we'll take that to the next part of the video to show you the results and what I could achieve with it. RM850 watt 80 plus gold power supply, dual Zotac GTX 980s, 4GB 980s, and 850. There's the drive cage. I had to reverse it to you know, make the cable mess a little bit more manageable. Or turn it 90 degrees. The drive cage, you can turn it 90 degrees to have the cables coming out the back or from the front, which is like, why would you want them out the front? So anyways, 850 Pro SSD, 512GB as boot drive, pretty freaking quick. 1TB Western Digital Black, main storage drive. We got an Asus Blu-ray burner up there. Pretty good. 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance, 1600 MHz CL10, 1.5 volts, running at correct speed as of now, and that's pretty much it. So, I'll see you guys in the next part of the video. Here we are at the last part of the video. So, I'm done with the system, the overclock's finished, I've done the benchmark stability testing. I'm here to show you the results. Let's take a look at CPU Z. 1.3 volts, 4.5 gigahertz. Decent for a 4770K, nothing special. It's not a Silicon Lottery winner, but it's a decent chip. I did manage 4.6 gigahertz at 1.38 volts. Wasn't really worth it to push it that high to get just a tiny bit of performance, extra performance out of it. So I just backed it down to 4.5, runs at a cool 70 to 75 degrees under like 100% load, which is, you know, excellent at 1.3 volts considering the 4770K, the Haswell i7, doesn't have the improved TIM that the Devil's Canyon chips have. So I'm happy with it, quite satisfied. It's not going to create any sort of bottleneck in any games. 4.5 is still insanely fast for a modern processor, especially Haswell. Other than that, the memory is running at 1800 MHz at CL10, 1.5 volts, 16 gigs of it. Everything's lovely, working fine, and the benchmark results I mainly just tested in Cinebench 11.5. It's my favorite CPU benchmark software. I have pretty much everything. Got anything from socket 478 Celerons all the way up to socket 1366 dual CPU. You know, that's a SR2 6-core dual processor unit. So the database I've collected over the years is quite extensive and shows you, you know, it shows a pretty good comparison toward other systems. Now, when the CPU out of the box on stock settings, I was getting, let's see, it's this, where is it? Yep, 8.17. That was the stock, about 3.9 gigahertz boost. That was what I was getting. And it's adequate, but with the overclock I managed to push it all the way up to 9.88, which is, I think, about a 20% performance improvement, which is nice, quite nice. You don't really sacrifice a whole lot other than slightly increased power consumption. I quite like the 9.88. Obviously, I've had chips that do higher, but it's just silicon lottery. You don't know what you get. 9.88, the run on the bottom, I just did it recently after I've installed all the programs, so it's a bit slower because there are more programs loaded and the CPU is not being utilized 100%. So 9.85 CPU score, 1.98 single core score, quite impressive for an 88 watt processor. Obviously we've pushed it a little bit further, so it's not quite 88 anymore. That's pretty much all I've got to say about it. The reason I didn't do this in real time is because the recording software I'm using to record the desktop is quite intensive. It uses about 20% of the CPU power, so I would have gotten much lower score if I were to run it in real time. But this is what I get just by running it right now. As you can see, it's orange. Moving on, GPU scores. The one and only benchmark I really like to run is Unigine Valley. Oops, not that yet. Here are the GPU-Z GPU-Z monitoring tool that I run during the benchmarking period. Sorry, I'm burping a little. So the cards ran about 15-20 minutes. I let the heat really soak in, and as you can see, this is the top card. Ended up at 88C maximum. The bottom card at 82C maximum. Bear in mind, these cards are almost sandwiched together with only a single slot between them, so the top card kind of struggles for airflow, as to be expected with the SLI setup in an air-cooled system. The fan speed, no, did not run 6,000 RPM. It was closer to 3,400, but as you can see, it went up to 81%. The bottom card was cool as a cucumber at 52%. It was almost inaudible. This one got a bit loud. You can take the temperatures under control if you at fan speed, but obviously that'll mean more noise, and there's always a trade-off in a situation like this. The graphics card, both of them were running rock solid at 1507 pretty much megahertz on the core, and 3900, which is 7800 megahertz on the memory. Pretty impressive. The stock clocks were around 1300 megahertz, a little bit less. It kept fluctuating, and as the benchmark kept running longer, the frequencies dropped. I don't have a benchmark to show you the stock results, but this is the overclock results, the 133.5 FPS and 5585 score. Quite impressive. Other than that, 95% TDP. I think I've set the TDP to around 250 watts. If and ever the customer reaches the point that that TDP is not enough, you can just simply launch Afterburner, and you get another 25% to go. I doubt this will ever. Unless you're running firmware, it'll never go over 125%. You shouldn't run firmware in the first place. Anyway, the voltages both at 1.275. It's not completely true. I've pushed them to 1.81 volts by hacking the BIOS, or modifying the BIOS. So the card run rock solid at that core clock 1506, and the memory clock of 7.8 gigahertz. So there's no fluctuation in clocks when it's under load. Runs at 100% performance. That's another reason the cards run a bit too high, too hot. 88C. It's still okay. It's not going to cause any sort of problems even in the long run, but that's mainly because the voltages are so high. The stock volts around 1.23 volts. With 1.23 to 1.28 is kind of a significant amount, considering these Maxwell cards are just that efficient. But again, air-cooled situation, there's not much you can do. For contrast, my 780 Ti's run at 1202 megahertz core and 7700 megahertz memory. It pretty much matches the 980s match or exceed the performance of my cards, while consuming significantly less power. So that's Maxwell to you. Those cards, the 980s, are super efficient. Other than that, quite happy with the overclock. There is a bit more room if the customer wants to push it. I just put these clocks to be 100% stable. I think you can actually run the cards close to 1550 megahertz and 8000 megahertz memory. I just clock them back a little bit just to have that 100% stability. I don't want him to have problems later. If he wants to overclock him a little bit further, he can. If not, this is already pretty fast. Now moving on to the last part, which is the storage benchmarks. I'm using Crystal DeskMark, which is kind of my go-to storage benchmark program. On the left side is the 512 gigabyte 850 Pro SSD, and on the right side is the Western Digital 1 terabyte drive, which is a Western Digital black 1 terabyte drive, which is the mechanical drive just for main storage. As you can see, the SSD completely outclasses the hard drive, but we knew that already. What impresses me is that I'm personally using a pair of 840 Pros in RAID 0, 256 gigabyte 840 Pros, and in 4K they can't come anywhere near close to 850. It's just that much more impressive. Like, we're talking 150% faster write speed on the 850 Pro part compared to a RAID 0 840 Pro pair. It's quite impressive. I've never seen SSD benchmarks as high as these, SATA SSD I should say. Again, it's just completely blew my mind when I saw those numbers. The sequential is obviously high enough. They're reaching the serial ATA revision 3 6 gigabit per second bottleneck and overhead, so there's not much you can do there. But the 4K is where it's at. That's really low end, high I/O operation, which is what you want out of the SSD. That's where the that's where most of the operations on the operating system happens. So yeah, I'm very impressed with the 850 Pro. Kudos to Samsung. It's still a bit expensive, but the performance you cannot match with any other drive on the market right now, any other SATA drive. The hard drive, on the other hand, is pretty standard. Decent read and write speeds, but you know, it's just for main storage, so I'm not really concerned about that. Yeah, so conclusion. Overall happy with the system. The system gets a bit noisy when the graphics card go under load, and the graphics can run a bit hot. If you don't care about noise and heat, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you're the sort of person that have to have absolutely the lowest decibel and you want to keep your components cool, the only other way to do this is to go with the water cooling loop, which we may in the future. The Cooler Master Stormtrooper has plenty of room for additional radiators. It's quite a possibility that we can water cool the graphics card later in the future. But for now, I must sign off. It's 2:30 in the morning. I'm quite tired, and I'm happy that I finished this build. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.